Hey, everybody, welcome. Today, I want to talk with you about unpacking porn addiction. 3 insights to start your journey. And what I'm going to be doing is teaching you a lesson about how you can kick your porn habit, even if that's been something that you've been struggling to do. If you're really serious about kicking the porn habit, there are a few things that are very important. There are a few things that you need to know. And to help you learn those, I'm going to use an example of a client that I worked with. For the purposes of this talk, I'm going to refer to him as Sam. Now, of course, that's not his real name. I want to protect his privacy and his confidentiality. I'm picking Sam because he's like hundreds of men who've reached out to me for help. Who is Sam? Well, first of all, Sam is a very smart guy. In fact, he's really, really, really smart. He's a guy in his mid 30s, and he's had very few goals in his life that he has not achieved. That's because Sam works hard at most of the things that he does, and he's quite used to meeting its goals. After he attended a prestigious university, Sam landed a high-paying, high-pressure, and high-responsibility job. It was actually his dream engineering job, and he snagged it right out of the gate. But that's where things got tricky for Sam because he began to stay up late. He stayed up till the very early morning hours, sometimes almost till dawn, and he was watching porn. He tried to stop. He read books about how to get off porn. He poked he poked around on Reddit and he sought support and advice from therapists. But none of those attempts really produced any lasting results for him. Over time, his compulsion to watch porn actually grew. It grew and it grew. He started paying women to perform online for him. And that's when it started to really get bad. During the day, he told me how he would sneak off and watch porn in his car, or he would go to the restroom in his office building and take some time to watch porn. So, over the course of a year or two, his adult content escalated. And he talked with me about how he felt driven to consume porn. Now, keep in mind, Sam was not a guy that thought that this was okay. He didn't feel good about himself while he was doing this. In fact, he felt ashamed, disgusted, and humiliated with the guy that he was becoming. That's because his porn use did not fit at all with the image that Sam had of himself. That's not what he was aiming for. And here's the difficult part for him, too. When he wasn't watching porn, he felt particularly repulsed and disgusted by some of the content that he watched. He was nervous because he knew that he was pushing his luck at work. And he was kicking himself for all the money that he was just flushing down the toilet watching porn. Over and over, he told me that he felt as if he were addicted to a drug, and this drug was kicking his butt. But the problem was that Sam had built a life, and he'd built a career that kept him always within just a few feet of a screen on which he could very easily pull up some adult content anytime he wanted to. He felt deeply ashamed, and it particularly troubled him just how out of control he felt. By the time Sam reached out to me, he had had several periods where he'd actually quit porn and then relapsed. He, he was becoming increasingly frightened that if he got into a relationship with the type of woman with whom he actually really wanted to be, she'd be freaked out by his behavior. She'd be grossed out and she'd head for the hills. But enough of the dark stuff here. What I want to do is I want to cut to the happy ending because Sam eventually let go of his compulsion to use adult content. Sam eventually gained control over it and he became the guy that he wanted to be. Here's the three things that we did that were the key to his success. First, Sam did something very interesting. He expanded his view of himself and his life. In effect, what he did was he called a ceasefire in his war on the porn habit. Instead, he started to see his porn problem as a sign that something a little bit bigger was really off for him. And it was time for him to make a bigger reset. Number two, he started to identify and address the issues that lay underneath the surface. And those were the issues that were feeding, that were fueling his addiction. Now, for Sam, this was an overwhelming fear of not being able to meet the demands of his career, which were quite real. And it was also the shame that he felt about not being able to handle the pressure very well on his own. And that's because Sam, his whole life, he'd been a pretty independent guy. And that kind of thing is great. It's great to be self reliant. But you see, for his whole life, he would stop himself from turning to others for any kind of support, for comfort, for connection, camaraderie, and for wise guidance. Instead, he held onto this image of being an ideal guy who had the ideal life, who looked great, sounded great, and he portrayed this image of being a man who had it all handled, who had it all together. And that takes us to number three. So we did help him stop the porn use. That's true. And we focused on it. But what we also did was we started to dismantle the deep and chronic isolation that Sam lived with. And for him, this meant up-leveling some of his friendships by opening up to people and by being more honest with his own family members. It meant that Sam needed to learn how to recognize and deal with the fear that he felt. So, in short, Sam had to grow his interpersonal skills and his personal emotional regulation skills. So, now this is the case with many men. Some of these things were skills that nobody had ever talked about and had certainly never taught Sam. This fear that lay at the root of his addiction, it was coupled with a shame that he carried of not having it all together because that's what he thought being a man meant, was just having everything handled and being completely in control. So all of this added fuel to the fire of Sam's porn addiction. Now, I'm talking about Sam because he's actually the perfect example of how single-mindedly over-focusing and fighting the addiction doesn't work for most people. And that's because it's really often just another kind of substitute obsession. You see, Sam was obsessed with porn, and then he would flip into being obsessed with quitting porn. And he would flip back and forth and back and forth, using, watching porn, relapsing, quitting, on and on and on. This was a whole loop that was a hellishly perfect obsessive distraction from the bigger issues that Sam was facing in his life. Now, what Sam did, and it's what freed him from his porn use, is he took a step back and he made a personal commitment to reset his entire self and his life. He was brave, he was courageous, he was willing to look inside and put all his cards on the table. And importantly, he prioritized his self growth work and he made a deep and abiding decision to align his life with his deeper, truer values. Doing this, Sam gained a healthy sense of pride. And it was our work together using my reset method that unleashed enormous growth in Sam's life. So, in a nutshell, here's my message for you. Please don't just fight the symptom. That is a losing battle. Instead, address the symptom and its cause. Deal with the larger context of your life. Now, I've got a question for you. Are you ready to do something about your porn use? If so, here's the next step. Watch my video at www.kickthehabitforever.com. I hope that you found today's talk helpful. If you watched the video, I hope you find that helpful. Please reach out to me. I'd love to help you. And one final request, as they say, if you found this helpful, please like, subscribe, comment, and share with anybody you think could use to watch this. Okay. Have a great day. And one more time, thank you so much for your time and attention.